People, what family secret did you learn that totally shocked you? I grew up in an cult. When I was a little boy, I thought my parents were happy together. I believed I had a wonderful mom and dad, along with an aunt and a cousin. My favorite cousin in the whole world, let's call her Emma. I remember one time, she told me that we weren't cousins, we were actually brother and sister, and that she'd overheard my dad talking to her mom about it. It didn't make sense to me at the time because we were about the same age, around 7, and she was always a bit of a prankster, so I thought she was just trying to mess with my head. But no, she was telling the truth, and it turned out to be very much true. As I grew older, I started to notice how unhappy my parents were together. I became more aware of the passive-aggressive remarks and the glares exchanged between them. One night, my mom got pretty drunk and confided in me that my dad had cheated on her multiple times and that she no longer loved him. She said that getting a divorce would be messy and would ruin Emma's life. But that didn't make any sense to me at the time. I was about 9 years old by then. A couple of years later, everything fell into place. My dad had been cheating on my mom, with his sister, my aunt. And Emma, it turned out, was his daughter. She really was my half-sister. And also my cousin, I guess. Even now, it's hard to fully wrap my head around it. I remember struggling with the truth and trying to talk to Emma about it, but she had already figured it out. She was always much sharper than I was. However, she didn't seem shocked, disturbed, or upset. She just shrugged it off. I thought that was strange. Emma was an early bloomer. She was taller than most of the girls in our grade and had curves that rivaled those of high school seniors. I think it definitely inflated her ego, and I knew she was seeing her boyfriend at the time. As for me, I was dealing with feelings of attraction towards her that I didn't want to acknowledge. I was just naive, and she was the one constantly giving me attention, and she was undeniably beautiful. Later, I found out her mom had essentially been encouraging her to pursue me instead of the boyfriend she had at the time. Everything went to hell when Emma coaxed me into sharing a kiss, under the guise of showing me how, and my mom walked in on us making out. She went ballistic and confronted my dad, saying she would file for divorce and take full custody of me. He moved out that day and went to stay with Emma and my aunt, but within a few days he came to pick me up while my mom was out. He told me that we were going on a trip, far away. He took me out of the country, right under my mom's nose. The drive was long. In hindsight, I feel like it took weeks, like a road trip. It was probably just days, though. Once we got into Canada, everything was explained properly. My aunt had long been part of a cult, an cult. I won't name them here, but she had persuaded my dad to join, and now they were bringing me and Emma into the fold as well. Of course, they never used the word cult or anything resembling it, but with the hindsight of adulthood, I now recognize that's what it was. Basically, one of the core beliefs was that doing it family members was natural. They had pamphlets all about how sleeping with a family member was the truest form of love. I can still remember the slogans on the front, how we belong with people who fall from the same apple tree. And crap like that. Whoever ran this cult was rich, because we were taken to a mansion-like house. I never met the leaders, but my social interaction for the following 5 years consisted of mostly Emma, but also occasional hangouts with other recruits our age. We were given a bedroom to share, which only had one bed. No one forced us to be together, but it was strongly encouraged, and Emma was all for it. I already had a huge crush on her, and she'd always been able to talk me into stuff, so it wasn't long before we were doing it. In leisure time, we hung out with the other recruits, and at least half of them were also openly doing it with their siblings or cousins. Thankfully, there didn't seem to be any PDF filing going on, nor underage pregnancy. Everybody who wasn't of age were given birth control pills. Looking back, some of the leaders were definitely prepping their own members to one day be romantic partners, but I never heard of anyone actually doing it with a relative outside their generation. One of the leaders was involved with her son, but he was a grown man. Anyway, this went on for years. I was 18 before I was finally rescued. They manipulated me, plain and simple. I was told terrible things about what would have happened to Emma if my mother had filed for divorce and exposed her parentage to the courts. They made me believe that Emma would have been ruined, maybe even severely harmed. At the time, I didn't think it would have ended well for her, and honestly, I still feel that my mother had no right to reveal such personal details about Emma. It was her story to tell, not anyone else's. But the cult twisted the truth, feeding me lies, and I loved Emma more than anything, more than anyone, as both a sister and a partner. So I believed it all. I became convinced that being with a family member was the purest form of love, and fell for all the other misguided ideas they pushed. I was nearing adulthood when the place was finally raided. They had even started talking to me about new responsibilities I would take on. But the police had been tipped off and had obtained a warrant, though the exact details are a bit unclear to me now. I do remember them bursting into the mansion. What stands out most vividly is that Emma and I were in the middle of taking a shower when the raid happened, and that's how they found us, hiding in the stall, scared and holding on to each other. They didn't cause us physical harm. On a completely unrelated note, we're white. However, they did shout at us to get dressed, and only after we complied did they treat us a little more kindly. Emma and I were taken by different people. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear her calling out for me for our father. Unfortunately, he had been injured while trying to escape and later passed away from his wound. I recall telling the police that they couldn't return us to my mother because she had tried to have Emma harmed. Although this wasn't true, I firmly believed it and repeated it with complete conviction. My mother didn't end up gaining custody of me, and I'm unsure if what I said to the police had any impact on that decision. However, Emma and I were placed in the foster care system and separated, each of us being sent to different families. They wouldn't let us stay together. By the time I turned 19, I was ready to leave my foster family. They did their best to help me heal, and I won't deny that they made some progress, but I was still deeply hurt. My dad was gone. I had no intention of reaching out to my mom, and I later found out that Emma's mom managed to escape the police. No one's heard from her since that day, so I've always believed she started a new life somewhere else far away. After I left my foster family, I tracked down a few friends from the cult, and we became roommates for a while I searched for Emma. It wasn't a healthy environment, though. We were all broken in our own ways, and none of us had the tools to help each other heal. My friends ended up falling into drug habits, and though it's something I'm not proud of, I eventually left them behind when I found Emma. We were around 20 when we were finally reunited. I am also not proud to say that we resumed our relationship for a couple of years, living as roommates, until Emma's foster mother found out we were living together and basically invited herself to live with us for our own good. That arrangement lasted a few years before Emma got a job in another city, and we went our separate ways for a while. We both moved forward with our lives, advancing in our careers, making new friends, and starting new relationships. Being away from the cult and each other gave us both the space to gain perspective. My 20s were a time spent deprogramming and healing. For a long time, Emma and I didn't see much of each other, aside from occasional phone calls. But when we turned 30, we met for a long lunch, and it became clear just how much we had missed each other. We had both grown so much as people, and we decided to be more involved in each other's lives. At that point, we were living in the same city, and we made it a priority to spend more time together. It was difficult, though, trying to build a normal sibling relationship after everything that had happened. But we made the effort. Now, I'm 36, and I've never tried to contact my mother. I'm sure she believed she was acting in my best interest, but I've never forgiven her for exposing Emma. As much as I loved my father, there's no denying he was deeply troubled. And my aunt, wherever she is, was just as broken. They were both victims of the cult, but so were we, and they perpetuated the cycle of brainwashing. I did some research and checked in with others who had been victimized, and as far as I know, the cult only operated that one group and location. Sadly, most of the leaders were never found or arrested, so for all I know, they've relocated and are still manipulating and harming other young people. Emma and I have had our ups and downs since we made the decision to get closer again. There have been times when we've taken a step back and distanced ourselves from each other. It's been difficult. We were in a committed relationship for many years, especially during our formative years. When we broke up, it wasn't because either of us wanted it. We've both gained wisdom and experience since then, but the love we have for each other as siblings remains, of course. The residual feelings of something more can still be hard to suppress at times. There have been moments when we've had to take a break, out of fear that we might slip back into something that isn't healthy for either of us. Sometimes I think it might be better to sever all contact entirely, to wish each other well, go our separate ways, and never look back. Perhaps that would be the healthier path to ensure permanent recovery. But neither of us is willing to do that. We get along so well otherwise, and all things considered, we are the last family each other has. Emma isn't married, and though I've been engaged before, my fiancé ended things. Maybe we'll both start families of our own one day, maybe not. But if I do have children, I want them to know their aunt. Of course, I don't want to tell my future wife, or even my kids, the full story about me and Emma. For obvious reasons, it's not something I would share with future partners. But at the same time, it's such a big part of my life, and it feels wrong to keep that from a partner. I don't want someone to tell me I have to choose between them and my sister, that it's her or me. I like to think that Emma and I have healthy boundaries, but a part of me still worries that we might repeat the cycle and end up in a situation like my dad and her mom. This whole situation is complicated. I have an amazing sister, and the traumatic experience we both went through caused our relationship to become unhealthily close, making it difficult to maintain proper boundaries. I often find myself comparing every woman I date to her, and when I imagine my ideal partner, it's hard not to think of her, or someone who shares her qualities. I'm not sure if I'll ever completely overcome those feelings. But the thought of never seeing each other again is so painful that we can't even entertain it. I love her deeply, more than anything or anyone. We've been through so much together, and we've survived it as a team. I wish it had never happened. But it did, and we have to live with it. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. My mother passed away when I was just 1 year old. She and my father were never married, and after her death, I lost all contact with my mother's side of the family. It wasn't until the last few years that I started learning how deeply troubled that side of my family really was. I only found out more when I reconnected with my sister, who had grown up in foster care after our mother's death. When our mom passed, my father wrote a letter to my grandfather, who was the head of the family and had legal guardianship of her 3 children. My dad wanted to take care of all 3 of us, but my grandfather insisted that each of us go to live with our biological fathers. Yes, we were 3 children, each by a different father. Well, actually 4 fathers, but let's start from the beginning. My grandfather was a German officer during World War II. Not the kind of officer who fought at the front lines, but one who had a comfortable, cushy life, staying safe while enjoying privileges. He must have been quite high up in the ranks. As was typical of many self-respecting Nazis, he didn't think highly of anyone who wasn't Aryan. In the late 1970s, my mother had a boyfriend who was Italian. Even though Germany and Italy were allies during the war, my grandfather couldn't accept it. He didn't want to know about the relationship. Then my mom got pregnant with my sister. She had to tell my grandfather, and he was furious. A child out of wedlock, and from a non-German man? He gave my mom an ultimatum. Cut ties with the boyfriend and follow his rules, or he would disown her. My mom went to her boyfriend, but he didn't want to marry her. Security was important to my mom, who had lived off my grandfather's wealth her whole life, so she cut ties with her boyfriend and went back home. My grandfather wasted no time. He arranged a marriage for my mom, and the man fell deeply in love with her. Somehow, she convinced him that her child, my sister, was his, and they lived together for 2 years. But things were far from happy, and eventually, my mom couldn't take it anymore and divorced him. She ended the marriage with a classic line. Don't expect to see the child again, she's not even yours. Understandably, the guy was devastated. My grandfather, ever the opportunist, quickly found another match for my mom. She got pregnant again, this time with my brother. They were married for another 2 years, but again, it wasn't a happy union. After that, my mom met my dad, divorced her second husband, and got pregnant with me. They were planning to marry, but just 2 days before Christmas, my mom tragically passed away from a fatal asthma attack. After her death, my siblings and I were separated. But instead of going to live with my real father, my sister was sent to live with the man who raised her for the first 2 years of her life. He knew she wasn't his child, and the arrangement didn't work out. My sister developed kleptomania as a coping mechanism, and a few months later, he sent her to foster care. My grandparents, who didn't like kids, made a deal with the children's home that my sister would stay there during the week and with them on weekends. So that's how she grew up. But you might think that's just a tragic, messed up story about irresponsible people. Unfortunately, that's just the start. My father, understandably upset with my grandfather for separating us and putting my sister in foster care instead of giving her to him, broke all contact with my grandparents. My dad and my grandfather had always hated each other. As it turns out, my grandfather was very wealthy. He owned a large estate with several buildings and lots of land, and my uncle had opened a multi-story dental clinic in Hamburg. Then things took a sharp turn. My uncle tragically offed himself. He had sent a fax to my grandfather saying he was going to kill himself, so my grandfather drove 500 kilometers to check on him. When he got there, my uncle opened the door, acting as though nothing was wrong, and claimed that the fax had been sent by his ex-wife out of revenge. But shortly after my grandfather left, the police informed him that my uncle had indeed taken his life. My grandfather took it hard, far harder than when my mom died. Just a few weeks later, he fell from a scaffold and died. Now, here's the strange part. My grandfather owned a successful construction business with a partner. After my uncle's death, my grandfather, who had been wanting to retire, had a meeting with his business partner and the partner's son. For some odd reason, they had this meeting on the construction site on a holiday, when no one else was around. The only two witnesses say that my grandfather slipped and fell from the scaffolding, but it seemed suspicious. Shortly after his death, tons of money disappeared from the business, and my grandmother never saw a payout from the multi-million Deutschmark company. It turns out that my uncle, the one who opened the dental clinic in Hamburg, had a serious gambling addiction. When my grandfather had given him 500k Deutschmark to invest, my uncle gambled it all away. My grandfather had to borrow money from the bank, using the estate as collateral. But my uncle kept gambling, and eventually, he was running from the Hamburg mob before he offed himself. So, my grandmother lost everything. But my aunt, the wife of my second uncle, who had died of cancer years earlier, took her in. That's where I got most of this information, as she witnessed everything firsthand. To recap the curse, my family has a long history of evil, misfortune, and dysfunction. My brother, sister, and I are the last survivors. Except for my grandmother, who passed away from old age, everyone else either died young, under unnatural circumstances, or both. Story 3. I helped my dad hide his affairs and enabled his infidelity in exchange for monetary benefits. When my mom found out, I laughed at her. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and to put it bluntly, my mom is a textbook wasp. She's never worked a day in her life and believes the world revolves around her. Growing up, she made constant snide comments about my weight, mocked my interests, and shot down any dreams I had about the future. She was obsessed with appearance and status, always preaching that I needed to be pretty enough to land a rich husband. Her internalized misogyny ran deep. Honestly, the only reason my self-esteem survived childhood was because of my aunt, my mom's sister. My aunt was the strong female role model my mother never was. She embraced the things I loved, whether it was comic books or martial arts, even when my mom scoffed at them. More importantly, she listened. She actually listened, unlike my mom, who could turn even the most serious conversation into something about herself. As for my dad, he wasn't abusive, but he wasn't exactly present either. He doted on my brother and basically ignored me. They did all sorts of stuff together and never thought to include me. My aunt, uncle, and cousins were my real family. They made me feel seen and loved. Now about the cheating. I was 17 when I found out. It was a weekend, and I'd come home early from a friend's house. I heard noises coming from the master bedroom, noises that didn't sound like my mom. I didn't want to walk in on anything, so I called out for my dad. Everything went silent. A few minutes later, he came out and told me he was watching TV. I wasn't stupid. I told him I knew someone else was in there and went straight to my room. The thing is, I didn't feel shocked or hurt. I felt nothing, and I realized I could use that. So I cut a deal with my dad. He'd pay for any college I wanted, no questions asked, if I kept his secret. I went to business school, something my mom absolutely hated. I even started helping arrange some of his meetups. He had an apartment just for his hobby, and I was the one who suggested it. His girlfriends had my number too, so I could help schedule things. He paid me well. And no, I didn't feel guilty. After the way my family treated me growing up, I didn't owe them a damn thing. Once I got my degree, I stopped being involved. I'd already gone no contact with my mom after high school, and after college, I kept very low contact with my dad. I only spoke to my brother once in a while. Then, about a week ago, one of my dad's exes spilled everything to my mom. She found out about the affairs and my involvement. She went through a full meltdown. She actually traveled to my city just to scream at me. I laughed at her face, told her the truth. Her perfect life had always been a lie. She cried. I told her to leave. My brother found out a few days ago, and now he's angry at me too. But honestly, I don't care. I did what I had to do in a screwed-up situation. I survived, and I made something of myself. That's more than I can say for any of them. Story 4. My family is helping me keep a major secret from my wife. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm a 36-year-old man, and I have a confession to make. For privacy's sake, I'll be changing the names of everyone involved. I have an 8-year-old son. Let's call him James. His mother is my cousin, Jessica, 34F. Our parents know the truth, but we all agreed to keep it hidden to protect the family's image. Jessica and I were very close growing up, and as teenagers, we crossed lines that shouldn't have been crossed. Eventually, we realized how wrong it was, and when we graduated high school, we drifted apart, only seeing each other now and then at family gatherings. But after college, I moved back to our hometown. One night we met up at a bar, old feelings came flooding back, and, well, one thing led to another. That night resulted in James. Fast forward to now, I'm married to an incredible woman, Mary, 33F. We have 2 beautiful kids together, a 3-year-old boy and an 18-month-old girl. Mary's family lives across the country, so we spend most holidays and free time with my side of the family. She genuinely believes we're all very tight-knit, especially that Jessica and I are close cousins. She thinks James is Jessica's son from a past relationship. She has no idea he's actually mine. James calls me Uncle Elijah. He has some cognitive delays, so even with the age gap, he and my son get along great. Over the years, Mary has casually mentioned how much James looks like me. I usually laugh it off. Sometimes I catch myself staring at Jessica a little too long. Sometimes I flirt without meaning to. Mary has noticed. I know she has. But she hasn't said much, maybe because she doesn't want to believe what she's seeing. A few weeks ago, Jessica came over for dinner in tears. She lost her job and was being evicted. Mary and I agreed to help her out, using money Mary recently inherited from her late grandmother to help cover the deposit on a new place. What Mary doesn't know is that I've also been quietly depositing money into Jessica's account every 2 weeks, and I'm planning to increase that amount soon. I have a good job, so financially it's not an issue. But it's a lie. And the worst part, I suggested that we pay Jessica to watch our son during the day, partly to give her an income, partly to keep her close. Mary's a stay-at-home mom and didn't see the need. I got frustrated, more than I should have. We argued, and I stormed out. I went straight to Jessica's old apartment. I shut my phone off and ignored all of Mary's calls. When I got back, Mary demanded to know where I'd been. I told her the truth, sort of. Said I needed to cool off and was helping Jessica pack. She didn't say much after that. Just gave me the cold shoulder. Eventually, Jessica moved into a new place nearby. She found a part-time job, and between that and the money I give her, she's staying afloat. I started visiting during my lunch breaks, since her apartment is just a few blocks from my work. That was the beginning of the end. Jessica and I fell back into each other. The connection, the history, it was too strong to ignore. For the past 2.5 months, we've been seeing each other again. Behind my wife's back. My relationship with Mary has been unraveling. The tension is growing. One day I came home, and she asked why I smelled like perfume. I lied, said it was from someone at work. She didn't believe me. We fought. I left. Again, I went straight to Jessica's. Then came the bombshell. When I finally came home, Mary sat me down and pulled out her phone. She had photos, my car parked outside Jessica's apartment during lunch for the past few weeks. She'd been watching me. I always thought something was off between you and your cousin, she said. Are you going to tell me what's going on between you two? I froze. I panicked. I told her she was being irrational and tried to flip it back on her. Somehow, I calmed her down. But I could see in her eyes, she doesn't believe me. And now I'm sitting here, full of guilt, torn between the life I've built and the secrets I've been carrying. I don't know what to do. If I tell Mary the full truth, I could lose everything. My marriage, my kids, my reputation. But the lies are eating me alive. I don't know how much longer I can keep this going. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Story 5. I snooped on my mom's messages and found out she's been cheating on my dad. I feel conflicted and guilty for going through her messages because, yeah, it's her privacy. But honestly, I don't regret it given what I found. Say what you want about me snooping, but I think it was justified. I'm not proud of what I did, but I needed to know. I don't think it's a physical relationship, yet. But it's definitely emotional. and that alone makes me feel sick. I've been carrying this around for a while now and haven't told anyone, not even my closest friends. I just need to get it out of my system and explain everything. About 6 months ago, I started noticing my mom deleting entire text threads from one of her coworkers. Let's call him N. I knew they were close, worked together for over 10 years, and with all the layoffs and budget cuts at her job, I figured she was just venting to a friend. She was working crazy hours and seemed completely drained all the time. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe she was deleting messages because she was using her work phone and didn't want her employer to see personal stuff. Whatever. But over time, her behavior started to feel off. She got weirdly protective over her phone, and she started mentioning N in casual conversation more often than usual. One night, we were out for dinner, something we do once a week, and she needed to drop something off at N's place. She looked at me and straight up said, "Don't tell your dad I'm going to N's house. He'll just make it a big deal. Tell him I went to Target or something. Haha." I didn't laugh. I went home and told my dad exactly what she told me to say. But inside, that was a huge red flag. If N really was just a friend, why lie about it? Still, I didn't say anything. She kept deleting texts, and I didn't have a way to see what was really going on. Eventually, she got a new phone and asked me to help her install some apps. WeChat, WhatsApp, banking apps, etc. A few weeks later, she asked me to help her transfer photos again, so I had her phone in my hands. On impulse, I checked WeChat. Just family chats. Then I checked WhatsApp, and there was N. No messages, but his name was saved. That was enough for me. I downloaded WhatsApp Web onto my laptop, so I could sync it and monitor any new messages. Lately, I've been traveling a lot with my dad and younger brother, because I'm in the middle of a big move for a summer internship. It's an 8-hour drive we've done a few times now. After one of those trips, I opened WhatsApp Web on my laptop, and there it was. Tons of deleted messages, but new ones coming in. "I love you and miss you so much. I wish I could help." Long conversations about N's problems, and my mom was being incredibly sweet and affectionate. Way more than she ever is with my dad. I wasn't even shocked, just kind of numb. Like, yup. I was right, and that hurt more than anything. Because my dad? He loves her. He bends over backwards for her. He's patient, kind, supportive, everything. And she treats him like absolute garbage. She nags, complains, and snaps at him constantly. And yet here she is pouring all this emotional energy into N. I know she met up with him at least once for dinner. And I know I should have screenshotted the messages or something, but I didn't. I was paralyzed. Then I found out she deleted all the messages again before my dad and brother came back to pick her up for an appointment. Like clockwork, cleaning up the evidence. Since then, I've been back home, and the contrast is just killing me. She'll cancel spa appointments to help N move, tell him how much she loves and misses him, and bend over backwards for him. But for my dad, she won't even say thank you. I don't remember the last time she said, "I love you" to him, or helped him with anything without an attitude. I know a lot of people are going to tear into me for reading her messages again, but at this point, I don't care. I've seen too much to pretend everything's fine. Now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Part of me says, stay out of it. It's not your business and you violated her privacy. But another part of me is screaming that my dad deserves to know. He's being played. And we've always had this honest, open kind of family dynamic. I never thought I'd be the one hiding something like this. But if I tell him, I don't know what would happen. It would destroy everything. It would break my little brother's heart. And it would tear our family apart. I'm just lost. And angry. And hurt. And I needed to tell someone. Even if it's just strangers on the internet. Story 6. Recently uncovered family secrets have left me feeling empty and disconnected. Not sure if this is the right sub, but I really needed to get this off my chest. I haven't told anyone about it, and it's been eating me up inside. Some background first. I grew up with both parents and 6 siblings. 4 of them are half-siblings from my dad's previous relationship, so they weren't always living with us. As far as I remember, my childhood seemed happy. My parents got along well enough, and there wasn't any noticeable tension. We lived in a beautiful, spacious house in Norway that my dad bought for around 1 million Norwegian kroner, roughly 100,000 US dollars. It was a dream home for all of us. Then out of nowhere, my parents decided to sell it. They said they were tired of the place, but it felt weird because both my sister and I loved that house. I was around 10 at the time, and that's when the cracks started to show. My parents began fighting more, and things just didn't feel right. We ended up moving into a cramped apartment, supposedly waiting for the right house. It had 2 tiny bedrooms, a small bathroom, and a combined kitchen living space for 5 people. Around this time, my youngest sister was born. Her pregnancy was completely unexpected and only discovered a couple of months before birth. Due to my mom's size, no one, including her doctor, noticed. They initially thought her symptoms were food-related intolerances. After 2 years, we finally moved again, this time into a much smaller and less appealing house. It cost almost 3 times what my dad paid for the original one, but that was partly due to rising housing prices. Still, this new house never felt like home. My dad didn't seem to like it either. Looking back, I now understand why my parents always rejected the houses we liked. They couldn't afford them. And then things really unraveled. My grandfather, Dad's side, recently lost his home in a forced sale, apparently due to a gambling addiction. My dad used to work with him and knew a lot about his financial troubles. This was actually the second time my grandfather lost a home due to debt. After my grandmother passed away from cancer, things spiraled for him. He now lives in a small apartment and owns basically nothing, just a car, which he might lose soon. A few weeks ago, my dad got a call from a local dog club, one we were all members of. They had discovered that my grandfather, who was their treasurer, had stolen about 143,000 Norwegian kroner, around 14,300 US dollars, over the course of a year. They held an emergency meeting without him and have reported him to the police. That was devastating enough, but then something even worse came to light. We recently received a threat of our own house being sold through forced sale again. I asked my dad about it, and that's when he finally told me the truth. My mom has the same addiction as my grandfather. She's a compulsive gambler and spends an obscene amount of money on drugs she doesn't even need. Painkillers, nasal spray she's addicted to, and appetite suppressants that don't work, but she still spends 3,000 Norwegian kroner, $300 USD, a month on. She took out a massive loan in my dad's name years ago, millions of NOK, and lost all of it to gambling. That's why we had to sell our first house. My dad went to NAV for help, and they strongly advised him to report her to the police. He didn't, because he didn't want to put us kids through that. They told him there was no way to save the house otherwise. So it was sold for about 2.6 million Norwegian kroner, $260,000 USD. And every cent went toward paying off the debt she had created. That's why we were stuck in that tiny apartment for 2 years. Eventually, my dad managed to get a municipality loan, rent-free, under one condition. If they missed a single payment, the house could be forcefully sold again. And now that warning has come. What hurts even more is that my mom has recently started borrowing money from me. I said yes, thinking we were just struggling like most families these days. But no, she spent it on her addiction. She takes money from my dad's debit card whenever she can. And every time he manages to get a little saved up, it's gone. I asked him why he's still with her. His answer? Because of you kids. Now I'm just empty. I feel like I don't know my mother anymore. I can still talk to her, laugh even. But once the moment passes, it's like looking at a stranger. That connection I used to feel is gone. My sister and I will likely move out in a few years, and we'll manage. But I worry deeply about our youngest sister. I want to help, but I don't know what I can really do besides talk to my dad and try to explain that while leaving her will be hard, it might be the only way out for all of us. Story 7. I sent an anonymous letter to my dad to mess with his head. My dad is a PDF file. He essayed all of his children from, at least, his first 2 marriages. Within the community, he is regarded as a well-liked and respected individual. A retired cop and devout evangelical Christian, he's managed to keep up appearances for years. His 3rd wife, along with his 3rd set of children, all adults now living independently, remain completely unaware of the abuse he inflicted on his children from his first 2 marriages. In total, he has 7 children, as far as I know, from all of his marriages. I'm one of the children from his 2nd marriage. To my knowledge, he's kept the existence of a child from his 1st marriage a secret from his 3rd wife and all of my younger siblings. I only found out about this sibling because they discovered information about my dad's 2nd and 3rd marriages and reached out to me on social media about 10 years ago. I've never told anyone else. My dad is full of secrets. I've had no contact with him and most of my biological family for many years. When I was young, He'd tell me that if anything about his past came to light, he would off himself, placing the burden on my shoulders, making it feel like it would be my fault if I told anyone. I've kept his secrets for nearly 40 years. Over the past few years, I've been in therapy, and it's helped me work through a lot of the shame and guilt I've carried. But now what I mostly feel is rage and a desperate need for justice. Unfortunately, justice isn't possible because the statute of limitations has long passed. So, I came up with an idea. I decided I would make it my mission to mess with him. I want him to feel fear, anxiety, and paranoia. I want to get inside his head and cause him to question everything. I honestly don't care if it ultimately leads to his downfall. Right now, I'm just sitting here with a bowl of popcorn, watching, waiting for the moment it all gets really interesting. I sent him a card. It came from a distant post office with no return address. On the front, in simple black font, it just said "Thinking of you," with a small line drawing of a flower that's actually poisonous. Inside I wrote, in heavily altered handwriting, "I remember, do you?" I also included a page torn from a Bible. It was from Luke, and I highlighted a verse. "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." Luke 8 verse 17. I thought the card and its contents were beautifully poetic, and I couldn't help but feel a little pleased with how perfectly it all fit. I made sure it arrived on his birthday. My plan is to keep sending him things at random intervals to mess with him. I've been writing down ideas in a journal, brainstorming new, poetic ways to unsettle him, to make him fear that his secrets are on the verge of being exposed. I spent my whole life terrified of him, and now I want to return the favor in a small, legal way. Story 8. My dad was arrested for having gay relations in a conservative country. I need to get this off my chest, but due to the nature of the situation, I can't really talk about it with anyone. It's been incredibly hard keeping it all to myself. I'm in my mid-20s, the eldest of my siblings, and I co-founded a tech startup that's doing really well. About 10 days ago, my mom woke me up around 4 a.m., frantic because my dad hadn't come home. He usually lets us know if he's going to be late, so we were worried something had happened to him. She tried calling him, but he didn't answer. Then, a few minutes later, my phone rang. It was my dad. He was at the police station. He told me he'd been caught doing his solo business in public. I immediately went to the station, and when I got there, I saw at least 8 officers in a room looking extremely serious. They started asking me questions about what my dad had said over the phone. I asked to see him first, and they got upset when I wouldn't answer their questions. Before I knew it, they were pushing me out of the building. As I was being escorted out, I caught a glimpse of my dad. The police told me to return at 7 a.m. I came back, but it wasn't until 10 a.m. that they told me they had found my dad with another man and that they were doing it. This was the reason for all the attention and why the officers, including the station chief, were discussing the situation so seriously in the middle of the night. I live in a very conservative country where being gay is considered a crime, and people openly wish harm on gay people. While I don't share these views, my reaction to the situation seemed to upset the officers even more. The weekend that followed was a nightmare. My dad was in jail, my mom was devastated, and I was trying to support both of them. I hadn't even had a chance to talk to my dad directly. I only saw glimpses of him as he was moved between buildings and eventually taken to prison. When the weekend ended, I managed to get him out on bail. He broke down when we hugged at the prison gates. The next week was spent trying to get him to talk to me and my mom. We had to tell several lies to keep it a secret from my dad's workplace and my siblings because we didn't know the truth yet. Yesterday, we finally sat down together. At first, he tried to downplay things, but eventually, he admitted to what had happened. He was indeed being intimate with the man I saw him handcuffed to, and they were caught by the police. Now, there's a court case coming up in 2 weeks. It looks like he could end up in prison for a few months, which, considering the laws here, might be the worst-case scenario. My mom seems to be handling it well. She said that when they married, it was for better or worse, and this is definitely the worst. She's indicated that we'll try to understand why he did what he did and help him through it. What bothers me most is that the man he was with is only a few years older than I am. I don't feel comfortable in our house anymore, and I'm thinking about moving out once things settle down, just to make sure my mom's okay and my dad is as okay as he can be. My mom mentioned that there's a possibility my dad was abused by his own father, which could explain some of his issues. Though my dad denies it, I'm not sure I believe him. It seems like a deeper, ongoing problem. It's hard seeing my dad so terrified. He calls me sometimes, saying he feels stuck, unable to leave the house, and needing reassurance. He's scared of ending up back in police custody. I don't know how this will affect the long-term dynamics of our family. Apart from this situation, my dad is generally a great guy, very kind, with a good sense of humor, and he's always been a supportive father. We've agreed not to tell my siblings about this, but that may become harder if he ends up serving time. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about all this. It's been so overwhelming, and I wanted to share it here and see if anyone has thoughts on it. I haven't talked about it to anyone else except my mom and dad, who are obviously living through it too. Story 9. My grandpa confessed his darkest secret to me, and I'm not sure if I can look at him the same way. My relationship with my grandpa has always been really close. I've always been his favorite, which he's never tried to hide. I have a younger sibling, and he has openly admitted that he prefers me over them, largely because of the maturity gap. There's a 6-year difference between us, so the contrast is pretty clear. I'm not going to dive too much into our history, but he's always been open about how much he likes me more than my sibling, due to their immaturity. Anyway, to get to the point, a few months ago, I had an assessment at university that involved an interview. After it was over, and it went really well, my grandpa invited me to lunch since it was early, and I hadn't eaten. We went to our usual family spot, a restaurant we've been going to for years. After we ate, we started talking about life and relationships. We touched on my late grandma, my longtime boyfriend, and then the conversation shifted to love in general. We spoke about his divorce from his most recent wife, not my biological grandma, and how badly it ended. A little while later, he looked me in the eye, took my hand across the table, and asked if he could trust me with something. A secret he hadn't told anyone, not even my dad or uncles, only his best friend. I was taken aback, but I promised I wouldn't tell anyone. I felt honored by his trust. It turns out that during COVID, around 2020 to 2021, he had been seeing a younger woman. He admitted to having an affair. At first, I didn't think much of it. He's had a rocky history with love, so I was even kind of happy for him. But then things took a turn when he mentioned feeling guilty about the age gap. He said, "I know she's so much younger than me, and from the moment we met, I knew it was wrong, but she made me feel things I thought had died with your grandmother." I started imagining the woman being someone in her 30s, maybe even 40s, someone far younger than him, but still within the realm of what I'd consider okay. I was wrong. When I asked him how old she was during the affair, I was expecting an age somewhere between 30 and 50. But the look in his eyes made my stomach drop. When we first started meeting up, she was 18. She should be around your age now. My heart sank. The girl was my age. She could have been his granddaughter. I was disgusted and felt physically sick at the thought of him being attracted to someone so much younger, someone my age. I leaned back in my chair in shock, and he kept explaining to try to make me understand his side. He said he ended it because he couldn't live with the guilt. He couldn't ignore how wrong it felt, even though it felt right at the time. He cut contact with her afterward, but he knew where she lived and avoids the area to prevent running into her. He also told me that she was a gold digger, adding, "A girl her age wouldn't like an old man like me for anything other than money." That made me even more disgusted. He had let himself be used by someone my age for money. I'm still repulsed by this every time I think about it, and I haven't told a soul. I feel like I need to talk about it with my therapist, but I don't even know what to do with all these emotions. It's just messed up, and I don't know how to process it. Story 10. I just found out about the most devilish secret in my family. I am a 23-year-old male, and I am a single child of my mom. I never met my dad, and I was told that he offed himself after hearing news about my mom's pregnancy. He was supposed to be 16 years old, like my mom in that time. Since I was a kid, I always felt like my family looked at me with a strange mix of disgust and pity. For the longest time, I thought it was because I was raised by a single mother. But as I started to grow up, even my mom began to look at me the same way. Over time, she slowly slipped into depression and alcoholism, and I didn't know why or how to help her. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to grab something to eat and saw her sitting there with an almost empty bottle of wine. It really scared me. I mean, who drinks at 8 o'clock in the morning? I asked her what was going on, why she was like this, and that question sparked a huge fight. We yelled at each other for about 10 minutes before she suddenly shouted, "I hate that you look just like your father." I froze, confused. Shocked. How could she know what my father looked like when I was my age? He's been dead for 23 years. I asked her, "What do you mean by that?" She just stared at me like I had said something unthinkable, then started crying. A moment later, she screamed, "Get out of my house." I didn't know what else to do. I packed a few things, just a hoodie, some underwear, and left. I went to a friend's place and asked if I could crash for the night. He said yes. I didn't tell him everything, just that my mom and I had a huge fight. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Her words kept running through my head. "You look just like your father." What was so wrong with that? Why did it hurt her so much? I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around 2 a.m., I packed up again and went back home. When I got there, I found my mom passed out on the couch, covered in vomit and wine stains. And then I saw the table. There were empty wine bottles, some pills, and a letter. The wine didn't shock me anymore. She's been struggling with alcohol for a while. But the pills? That scared me. That combination always spells danger. I immediately called an ambulance and explained what happened. They arrived quickly and took her in. Now I'm alone in the house. Then I remembered the letter. It was unfinished, but what I managed to read left me completely speechless and completely broken. Mom wrote that I'm a result of SA. What I'd already read had shattered me, but what came next was even worse. The man who did it was my uncle, my mom's sister's husband. After he found out he had gotten my mom pregnant, he started abusing her, demanding that she get rid of the baby. She wanted to, she really did. But by the time she could act, it was already too late. Eventually, my mom told the entire family the truth. And that bastard? He ran. Disappeared to another country, abandoning both my aunt and my pregnant mom. No one knew where he went. She gave birth to me and started therapy. For 3 years, she fought to come to terms with everything. And somehow, despite all of it, she chose to stay. She chose to raise me. Eventually, she accepted the reality for what it was and gave everything she had to be my mom. Despite the pain, despite how it all began, she truly loved me. But as I started to grow up, something changed. All the fears my mom had managed to bury during therapy came rushing back. Every time she looked at me, she didn't just see her son, she saw him. The man who SA'd her. The man who ruined everything. She couldn't handle it. So, she started drinking again, heavily. Trying to drown it all out. Trying to numb herself. When I read that part of the letter, I broke down completely. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My whole body was shaking, and my vision was nothing but a blur through the endless stream of tears. The next thing I remember, I was still clutching that letter in my hands. The letter that changed everything. I tucked it into my pocket and went straight to the hospital to see her. Her condition was stable, and she was awake. I walked into her room and pulled the letter from my pocket. The moment she saw it, she burst into tears. Through sobs, she apologized over and over. For keeping it from me. For the way she treated me. For all of it. She told me she never knew how to tell her only child that he was the result of something so painful. Something done by a member of her own family. We talked for hours. It was raw, emotional, and honest. For the first time, everything was out in the open. No more hiding. No more silence. Before I left, I kissed her forehead and told her, "I love you so much. Nothing will ever change that." She pulled me into a tight hug and whispered back, "I love you more than anything in this world." We said our goodbyes, and I went back home. From that day on, I visited her every single day for a week, until she was finally released from the hospital. When she finally came home, we made a choice to heal together. We committed to therapy side by side, and for the past 3 weeks, we've been going twice a week. I'm writing this now because our therapist suggested it. She said putting it into words might help ease some of the weight I've been carrying around for so long. The man who SA'd my mom, he's still out there. 23 years have passed, and no one's been able to find him. It's hard not to feel anger. How can someone disappear for that long without a trace? How can a system fail this badly? But even with all that anger and pain, my mom and I are healing. Day by day, we're finding our way back to ourselves. Our connection is stronger than it's ever been. And even on the rare occasions when she seems a little distant, she always comes back with love. She always tells me she loves me, and reminds me that one day, we will have the happiness we've always deserved. Update. Let's start with the bad news. My mom always said to start with the bad news, so the good news would shine even brighter. A week after I made my last post, my mom attempted to off herself. When she finally woke up 2 days later, it was the first thing I wanted to talk to her about. She told me something had just snapped. She felt like she was a disappointment, that she was a terrible person. I couldn't hold back my tears. Neither could she. She said therapy had been helping, but deep down, she thought I was ashamed of her. She believed that after I read her letter, I didn't love her anymore. That crushed me. All of it was a huge misunderstanding. No one chooses to be SA'd. No one asks for that kind of trauma. We talked about everything. She promised to keep fighting, to be there for me, to take care of me like she always has. God, I love this woman. If she died, I don't know if I'd survive that. We're still doing therapy, and we've even added more sessions to our schedule. Now for the good news. The amazing news. The authorities finally did their job. Took long enough. My uncle, the one who hurt my mom, was found in the Czech Republic, living with his girlfriend and 2 kids. Within a week, he was extradited back to our country. He's now awaiting trial. Update 2. Just left court with my mom, my aunt, his still wife, and the rest of the family. Emotions are running high, so I'll keep it short. That piece of crap was sentenced to 15 years in prison for SA and domestic abuse. I know, sounds unreal, right? That a trial wrapped up that fast? I was shocked too, but the evidence was solid. Everyone testified, grandma, grandpa, my mom, my aunt, even some distant cousins. And he confessed. He admitted to everything. The trial was fast. The verdict was clear. My mom and my family were relieved. He finally got what he deserved. But nothing can undo what he did. And honestly, I'm not happy with the sentence. He ruined her life. Sure, maybe I was born because of it, but think about the price she paid. I don't forgive him. I hope prison treats him worse than he ever treated my mom. But at least now, for the next 15 years, my mom and I can breathe. We can try to live a normal life. We've also decided to move away, to start over. We're looking at Germany, Ireland, or the UK. We have a good cousin living there. The family's sad, of course, but they support us. They understand why we need this. It's not easy. We'll have to sell the house, get passports, visas, and figure out 1,000 other things. But now that justice has finally been served, we feel like we can move forward. There's one more thing about my mom, but I'm not ready to share that yet. Maybe one day. All I care about is her happiness. That's it. She's my light in the darkest sky. My reason to smile. My everything. That's all for now. Peace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.